Welcome back to the next episode in the series I'm calling My AI Journey. This one that's going to follow and the video that's after that, so it's going to be a two-parter here. These two videos are two parts of a talk that I did for a mastermind that we had recently, about a month or so ago. And so what you'll hear in both of these videos is kind of the lay of the landscape for what's happening in AI that we're seeing, as well as some really practical tips and strategies that can help you get started and can help your people inside your organization too. So I hope you enjoy this. If you need more information, some of the slides or slide deck or anything like that, just drop me a comment down below and I'll be glad to help you out. So enjoy the talks. The title I created for this session is The Approaching Wave: Implications and Strategies for AI. And the reason I use this metaphor or the symbol of the wave is because it feels like there's this giant wave of change, new technologies, new ways of working, new workflows, new systems. There's a lot of things that are going to change because of AI. And no doubt you've read the articles, you have heard about it or seen it in various ways, but at the mastermind event that we did recently, I knew this was going to be a topic and a lot of people are asking us about it now. So I did this presentation. It was supposed to go for about an hour or so. It ended up being about an hour and a half, and then a lot of discussion around it as well. I'll show you some of the questions that I asked the group, and if you want to, you can leave comments down below as to what you're seeing and maybe your opinions or maybe even questions that you have. And hopefully this is not a lot of technical jargon. This could be more about strategies. It's going to be more about how would you see yourself in your company, your organization, your leadership team implementing and using AI, not at the user level, but much, much more beyond that. And so we'll talk about that as we go here. So some of the goals for this session is to clarify AI's role. And I know AI is a big term and covers a lot of different components or different ways of looking at it. But to start to think about, where does this fit into your strategy for 2026 for your organization? And then how do you identify some quick wins? What are some immediate things you can do or some different ways to think about it? I'll give you a couple of tips and some things I've heard from other people, as well as some of the consulting I've done with our clients so far, and being able to show them or to even have them start in this process of implementing some sort of AI tools or technology in their organization. And then what are some of the pitfalls in the early stages? As is the case a lot of times with the cutting edge or bleeding edge of technology, there is going to be some points along the way where you stumble or where it doesn't work out like you wanted it to, or perhaps you realize you got to stop and back up and fix something else before you go forward. So we'll talk about some of those as well. So this is a point that I keep coming back to based on my experience as an IT director and a supply chain director roles that I played for organizations, that this issue of AI is going to be a lot like those issues, coming of a new technology and a new way of working. And yes, it's going to be pervasive. It's going to touch everything, but it follows leadership. You choose to lead it. How you choose to lead this effort is going to be key. It's going to be paramount. Okay. In organizations where they start first with the technology and they lay it over top of the strategy or over top of a business problem or outcome that they want, it rarely works. It rarely works. And so what we're seeing, what we're recommending to our clients, it fits with the experience that I had in previous roles, is that whatever technology you put in place, it should serve your business strategy, your organization's strategy, not the other way around. The better you understand what business problem you're trying to solve or what business outcome you want, the better off you're going to be. This is the number one question I ask people, because people say, well, what should I do about AI, or where should I use it, or how should I use it? Or when people start to ask the questions, the first thing I do is I say, okay, let's ask ourselves, what's the business problem that you're trying to address? Okay, what problem is it you're trying to address? What opportunity are you trying to go after? What's the business outcome on the other side of this? Once you determine that, once you have a very clear goal in mind of what you're trying to address or what you're trying to solve for, now we can start to think about how does the technology help you and enable you to do that better, faster, and cheaper. So in this session, I'm going to talk about the lay of the land. What has happened this year? Where are we in the world of AI? What are some of the developments that I see that are most important to our clients? and then maybe a little bit of a case study that will show you how people are going about implementing AI in a way you could see for yourself as a small business or mid-market business. The second part of this, which will be a second video, we'll talk about the 4 pillars that we are using to help people with AI and new solutions like this. It's a 4-part strategy or framework that we use. And then start to dive into what are some of the things that you can start to do right now. And a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a preview, it may not even be AI related. There's some other foundational things you could do to get yourself ready for implementation. Okay. All right. What's the layout of the landscape? I'm going to talk about this in 2 different ways. I'm going to talk about first in the national landscape, what's happening across the U.S. and what are some of the larger, broader trends. And then I'm going to drill down into the area and find myself and some of our clients, central part of North Carolina, in the Triad region. And I want to show you how to think about it, not just the broader sense of the nation, but also to drill into your local area, wherever your business is or wherever you're operating. It's pretty safe to say we all know that we've had some sort of experience with AI. It's, ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or Gemini or the large language models that you have started to chat with and to get some sort of output from it. Stats are showing now that about 19% of adults use some form of AI daily. That's about 55 million people. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of days I use it more than once. In fact, I spend half of my day in there preparing content or helping me rewrite something or generate ideas or to bounce strategies off of it. There's lots of different ways to use it, and of course a lot of people are learning that. But we have to realize we're still very early in for use of this tool, and although it's growing and evolving very rapidly, we're still very early. ChatGPT had its 3rd anniversary last week. We're still very early in on this. That also means that a lot of the technologies are not yet mature, and a lot of organizations and companies are still trying to catch up to what it looks like to be ready to implement AI, and we'll talk more about that here in a moment. We also have to acknowledge that the opportunity here is massive. AI is not going to be something you do in your accounting department or something on your sales team or in the warehouse or in your manufacturing center. It's going to touch everything, every part of your business, every part of your organization. It's going to be impacted or stands to benefit from it in lots of different ways. That also means the risk is high, especially when you're early. When you're early in the cycle and people are still figuring it out, the tools are still developing, and I really believe some of the things that we use right now, they're going to go away in the next 2 or 3 years, or they'll change or morph into something else. Because we're so early in this adoption curve, there's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be some companies and systems that make it, and there'll be new ones that take their place, and eventually we'll have the winners take shape probably over the next 5 to 10 years. So every organization is experimenting with AI. In some cases, people are doing it on their own. They're logging into their own ChatGPT account, or perhaps the company has given them an account that they can use. So people are experimenting with it. And we're seeing some tiny results, and we're seeing some data already come out that when people use it, they feel like they're more productive and they're getting more done. The quality of that work we'll talk about here in just a moment. A lot of people are focused on learning the tools, especially the chatbot tools where you're chatting with an LLM and it's answering questions, or maybe it's asking you questions and it's generating content for you. It's a magical moment when you ask it a question, it generates all this content and gives you paragraphs of stuff back. It's pretty hard to believe the way that it works sometimes, especially the first few times that you use it. But we're still learning the tools. We're learning how the tools work and what they're capable of, and now we're starting to use our imagination to think about what's next. There is this thing, though, called AI slop, and what it's doing is these LLMs are able to generate lots of information, lots of content, and it feels like the easy button. It feels like I can give it this one-line command, and it gives me back a bunch of stuff, and then I can send that off to somebody or use it or post it or publish it. And while there's a lot of information, there's a lot of it that's good, what I'm seeing, and a lot of other people are seeing too, is that lots of information doesn't mean it's good information or that it's even usable information. And the more generic your prompt is, the more generic the results are going to be. And already now, probably you've had some of the same experience too. You can start to read something and you think, this sounds a little bit too good or too polished, or sometimes it doesn't sound like a person wrote it like a real live person. I've actually gone into websites or blog articles and run them through an AI detector, and yep, it says 100% this was written by AI. And there's a lot of stuff out there now, and we're going to go through a bubble of that where there's a ton of information being generated, but is really good quality information and helpful information. We're seeing a slight downturn in critical thinking. Not that there were high levels of critical thinking across the board to begin with. Another issue, another time. Don't get me started on that one. But the lack of critical thinking, people to be able to think for themselves. I think we're seeing some decreases in that. And then, of course, you got the whole ethics of it, people passing it off as their own work. And is that right? Do I need to footnote it, say something about it? Where does the line start and stop between what I generate and what the LLM generates for me? That's going to continue to be a question for the near future. There's a lot of hurdles to clear as well. There's increasingly, this first one here, data readiness, is about everybody I talk to, this is an issue. Now, from my days of being an IT director, I know that that was also an issue, that it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And I've done some other videos over on the D4 channel. You can see those, that if I have garbage in my system, AI helps me get the garbage to flow through the system faster. Good data is still a prerequisite, and there's a lot of us that don't have the data in the right place, or it's not mature, or it's not well structured. A lot of people I'm talking to, that's the problem. So understanding where that data is and having the data ready for the systems, that's a big hurdle that a lot of us are going to have to deal with. The new thing this year that has taken the AI world by storm is agents. And these pre-programmed or autonomous parts, or kind of digital employees, or the parts of this that can do tasks on its own, that has come of age. And now AI cannot just give you information back. It can take that information and start to act on it. It can actually start to do things with the information that it generates. There are some companies already implementing these across the organization. I'll talk about that in a moment of what I heard at the AI conference. This is going to be big. It's very, very early on. This is the first breakout year for it, but it's only going to grow because a lot of companies, organizations, senior leaders are going to find out that some of the menial, everyday, mundane tasks that nobody wants to do, the agents will do it, and they'll do it without complaining, and they'll do it all day long, 24/7. And so this is going to open up a whole new field of AI for lots of companies and organizations to have to deal with. Fundamentally, this is the big hurdle for a lot of people, is to rethink how you do work and what a workflow looks like. I've told several people to stop thinking about verticals. Your part in this process is being some sort of vertical step. Somebody else does their step and I do mine, and then I pass it on to somebody else. So I'm focused on my task within the workflow. To succeed in the future, you've got to think about the entire workflow. Think about it in a horizontal fashion, moving from step A to Z. What are all those steps, and how do you start to rethink work across all of those steps, and how to optimize that, how to improve that, how to allow AI to come in and do some of those steps for you? That's going to be huge. And so this gap between adoption and success is wide right now. There are some people playing with the technology, using the tools, maybe starting to experiment with some workflows inside their organization. But full-blown adoption and success metrics on the end of that, and to see how it saves money and time or grows revenue, that's still very much a gap for most organizations. So I mentioned the AI conference. I was out there a couple of months ago in San Francisco. It was packed. I've never been to a conference that was that packed. Every session I went to, there were people standing all the way around the seats, around the walls, sitting on the floors. This place was packed. Some of the key themes that I heard there was data maturity and availability, the most important thing, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. Work, the way we do work, is totally being reimagined, and people are creating some amazing things for how to do work and how agents and AI and automation can help with that. Human involvement is definitely necessary. I'll show you a slide here in a minute, but it's going to be a different kind of role. We're going to have to think about how we interact with our work in a different way. And AI is going to affect everything. Most of the folks that were there at the conference are saying this is even bigger than the internet, because it takes us into a whole different space than trading information and data. and sites and people being able to communicate or to pass data back and forth, which is the basis of the internet. It's more than that because it's not getting the information, it's doing something with it, it's taking action, it's in another realm. It's also access to information in a way that we haven't had before. It's going to be pervasive, it's going to be everywhere. One of the sessions that I enjoyed the most, and I went to 2 sessions with Ansh Kamwar, and this guy from Reltio, he was amazing. He's their chief product officer. They have a product that helps you find and aggregate data across your entire organization and then to make it ready for AI applications. And I talked to some of their folks at their vendor booth. This product is mainly for enterprise, very large organizations. There's nothing yet in the mid-tier for small businesses. It really is pretty amazing what they're doing and the way they're going about this, and they're solving a fundamental problem for companies. The data, putting the data in the right place and then making it available to AI applications. If you think about it, a lot of companies have this sprawl of different systems all across the organization. I was talking to a client yesterday, and they were outlining, we use this system for this, but then we've got this system over here, and that's kind of an old system, and they don't really support it, and it's hard to get them to integrate anything with anything else that we have because it's a legacy system. Oh, and then we have this system over here that has this data, but we can't get anything to move, and so we need to create something else that will communicate. It was a real spaghetti network of systems and data, and a lot of those are legacy systems that really don't connect to anything else. That's a lot of organizations, right? There's going to be a period of time where people are going to have to update what they have, or in some cases scrap what they have and start over with something that's AI enabled. In any case, there's data all throughout your organization. Think about this. I mentioned this at the mastermind event that we did, and it really got people to thinking. Data lives in lots of different places inside your organization, and that data is accessible and usable by AI where it hasn't been by other systems. So take, for instance, documents. You have tons of documents probably stored on your server, on a cloud server, or in folders. These could be contracts or proposals. They could be, letters. They could be any sort of thing that's a written document that perhaps it's digitized. You've got it in a PDF or a Word document or some other format. And those are all out there, but they're not categorized. They're not put into a database. There's no intelligence on those documents or the way they're organized. AI can read those and make sense of those and start to categorize and use those where perhaps you haven't had them in a usable format before. You still have to collect those. You have to put them in a certain place, and you have to be able to describe what kind of information you're looking for or what exists in that database of files. Another instance that hasn't been accessible to us before, but now is accessible because of AI, think about voice recordings. Perhaps your company records your customer service calls and you go back and review those, or you can review them if you need to troubleshoot or if you need to do some training. If you have those recorded calls, now you can turn those into data, usable data. They're data right now. It's maybe in a format that you don't use it or it's cumbersome to use. Those can be used now. So if I can take that and put it into a format or use AI to get it into a format where I can use it, now I can start to mine all of those calls for additional data, insights about the customer, about problems, about all sorts of things. So if you think about it, there's data all throughout your organization. How do you collect it? How do you bring it together? And then how do you make sure it's usable in some format that allows your business or organization to have an advantage? If you had access to all that information, you might be able to start making different decisions, right? Like if you could look at the data or use the data. That data intelligence is that second part there, is understanding how do we take the data we have and start to have real intelligence around it and start to bridge this gap. Then the very top level is agent orchestration. Okay, so before you turn AI loose to start doing things and putting agents in place that can start to run automatically, you deal with some of these other steps first. That was a recurring theme all throughout day one at the conference. This one by Molly Breen, who's the co-founder of Perigee, and she's helping companies think through their entire organization and how they implement AI across large enterprises. I love this slide here because this helps us put to words or think about what our role is and what the role of AI is. I know it's easy to say all the machines are going to take over and nobody will have a job. Could be. I don't see that happening, but there's a lot of people who jump to that extreme. Or the other people who will say, AI can never replace me, it can never do what I do, I'm the only person that could ever do this job. Yeah, that's probably a little bit extreme too. Okay, so it's probably going to be something in the middle. I like this approach, that there are going to be automations that happen and there are going to be agents who are doing the work, but there has to be some human in the loop to monitor the progress or to fix and address issues or to answer questions or to give support to the process or to introduce new agents or new parameters or to set things up to solve a new business problem or to address a new kind of customer or a new kind of need. That's still going to take humans who are interacting with the world around us in order to introduce information or to monitor the systems that are at work. And I love this way of thinking about it, humans in the loop. Doesn't mean the humans are doing all the work. There's a lot of work. We can give it to the machines and let them do it. They can do it better, faster, cheaper, more accurately. But where do the humans fit in? There still has to be a human in the loop for many of these processes and in our businesses and our organizations. So what are some key statistics from this past year? About 78% of companies are using AI in some form or fashion, at least in one function of their company. Lots of people are adopting it, almost 60% adoption across the world. That's another way that AI is different. It's getting adopted across the entire world much faster than the internet. The internet grew out of the US and then was later to be adopted by many other nations around the world. And this is different. The adoption rate around the world is tracking as fast as the U.S. It's everywhere. The generative AI market, one of the LLMs or one of these chatbots that can generate information for you, that's a huge business. It's $500 billion. That's how big that market is. And lots of organizations are already tracking and measuring ROI. They're starting to think about, what am I getting out of this and is it worth it? A lot of projects are failing right now. These figures here are somewhat disputed, and I'll talk a little bit about this perhaps later. Some of this is because it's new. Some of it's not an AI issue. It's that data issue, or it's a training issue, or it's some other issue that leads to the failure of the project. It may not necessarily be the AI tool and its fault. In some cases, it's a complex system or process or workflow. There could be lots of reasons why it fails. We do know that mature deployments where people have success and things run smoothly now and people are showing huge gains in productivity, those mature projects, there's still very few of those. There's not a lot of companies that are doing that really well. So while AI is mainstream, AI that works inside of an organization across an entire workflow, that's still pretty rare. And most companies are not yet mature in their AI deployment. So if you feel like you're behind or you feel like you haven't started to implement yet, then you're in good company. There's still a lot of people trying to figure this out. The ones that do figure it out and do it well are the ones that focus on strategy and process and getting their people ready for it. It's still those basics. This is a new technology, and yes, it's going to affect everything, but you got to get the basics right, and that is, what's your strategy? Let's make sure the processes are right and that they work well to start with. Let's make sure we got good people in place. Let's make sure those people are trained. Let's make sure that they know where they can experiment and how they can develop, and let's empower them to come up with new innovations or new ways of doing things. Those are still going to be what separates the winners from those who fail at this. The business strategy, having a clear business strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, and then let the technology supplement that or augment that, that's the way to go. Okay, so perhaps you can drop a comment down below. What's something that was covered in this session that perhaps is new information or perhaps something you haven't thought about before, or maybe you're thinking about it differently? I'd love to know your feedback down below. Now, if I drop down a little bit more close to home, our business is based in the central part of North Carolina. This Brookings Institute study caught my eye because it was a study done across the entire country, looking at what are some of the factors that make a area, a city, a metro area more AI ready, if you will. And so there's several factors that they looked at. One of these was talent, another was innovation levels, and another was adoption levels for AI. Unfortunately, when I looked into the data here, my particular area, Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem, scored pretty low on the scale. But then again, a lot of the people that I'm talking to, this makes sense. It's still very much a new thing. It's still scary to a lot of people. It's confusing to a lot of people. And we're not known as a tech hotbed for, our state or for the country. And so that makes sense. Some of the areas that were superstars, San Francisco, San Jose, that makes a lot of sense. RDU and Charlotte here in North Carolina scored really well. The Raleigh-Durham area, for obvious reasons, a lot of tech companies there, headquartered there, as well as the university environment. Charlotte scored really high for the amount of resources they have, but also being a center of fintech. It's the headquarters for Bank of America and Truist, and there's a lot of good fintech that's happening in that area. So that bodes well for North Carolina overall. If you look at talent, one of the things we're looking at in the Greensboro High Point area are the amount of graduates in computer science, engineering, mathematics. It's not nearly as high as some other places. Very few enrolled in some sort of PhD STEM program. There's not really a lot of AI research papers coming out of our area. Very few patents, only 4 AI patents coming out of the Triad area. And not a lot of job postings yet. Honestly, if you think about a metro area of the Triad being over 1 million people and only 794 job postings that require AI skills, to me that sounds pretty low. All these numbers sound really low, which means that even in a thriving area, Greensboro High Point, in a thriving state, North Carolina, there are still a lot of people that are still trying to figure this out or not yet caught up to it. Here's some of the perceived barriers and obstacles that I found in research. A lot of these are very specific to North Carolina, but they probably translate to lots of other areas in the country. First of all, the skills and the time it takes to learn a new technology. It's a real demand on people's time, which is really interesting. If you think about it, it's ironic that AI will save me time, but I don't have time to learn how to use AI in my organization. Companies are going to have to come to grips with that. We're going to have to allow people some time to learn the new technologies, to play around with it, experiment, to get them trained so they can increase the skills so that eventually they can start to be more productive in their job. Data readiness, there's a lot of companies say their data is not ready yet to put new systems in place. ROI, the cost of this, that's always a concern, especially in small to mid-sized businesses. And privacy and compliance, that's a big issue too. We can't turn these systems loose and they're doing who knows what behind the scenes, especially if you're in a business that requires some sort of compliance, like in the medical field or some sort of legal compliance. Of course, that's going to be a concern as well. And then privacy. There's still a lot of folks still trying to figure out the privacy. There's multiple different kinds of levels and ways to address that. Perhaps we'll cover that in a future video. So here's some of the things that executives here in the Triad are asking based on our research and some research done in this area. A lot of people want to know, where do we start without breaking something? I'm afraid if I put this new system in, it's going to break something else. And so how do I do that safely? How do we get value from AI if our data and processes are messy? And short answer there, you can't. Okay, so you're going to have to back up and start with some process mapping and cleaning up the data first. Security, IP, and compliance, of course, that's a huge concern. Is AI going to cut jobs or change roles? Yes and no. It may not be as pronounced as you think it's going to be, to start with at least, but it is going to change. It's going to change everything. And the companies that fall behind may pay a price. Somebody else is going to pass you, or somebody else is going to steal employees away from you, or they're going to be able to compete differently because they have access to new systems that can accomplish so much more. And then a lot of people want to know which roles and benefits are going to benefit first. I would say marketing, generating content, it's going to be so much easier, and these systems can write marketing content so fast, so well. Customer service, especially with voice agents or other bots that can answer questions and help customers without a human being involved. Those low-level kinds of things, those are going to be taken care of by systems. Reporting and analytics. You know, the old days of having to dump stuff in Excel and then drag cells around and do subtotals and put formulas in, that's going to go away. There's going to be so much more reporting and analytics that can happen so fast, so much better than it used to. So those are going to be some of the roles that are going to be affected the most and probably first. Speaking of change and speaking of how people adopt to change, I love coming back to this slide and helping people see this is throughout all this change, no doubt some of you are your head spinning. You're thinking, oh, I don't want to go through all this. This is way too much. This makes me uncomfortable to think about going through this much change. There are probably other ones of you who are listening who are saying, yeah, this is fabulous. I can't wait to get started. I wish my organization would go faster. How do we get there faster? I get it. Like this is a diffusion of innovation. This is back from the 1960s. One of the systems we use when teaching and training teams how to communicate better and to improve their team dynamics is the 5 voices. And so if you're familiar with that, we've got the 5 voices overlaid here on this innovation curve. There are some voices or some personalities that naturally get change or adopt change much faster than others. You know, the creative voice, which is my first voice, the pioneer, the connector. These are usually the innovators, the early adopters. They see the change. They're willing to go into the change. They're willing to experiment and create new ideas faster. Those tend to be the ones that are going to be your early adopters inside your organization. That middle majority is a lot of the guardians and nurturers, and some of those are even going to lag even behind that, where it's going to take them some time. They may be fearful of it, they may have questions, or maybe their brain isn't wired for systems in that sort of way, or perhaps they're thinking about all the people implications. This is going to affect people's jobs, and how does this affect our values as a company? And there's going to be a lot of those questions that may make them a little more hesitant to jump in at the beginning. So if you're a leader and you're leading an organization into adopting AI or experimenting with AI or starting to use it for certain workflows and processes, then this is going to be helpful for you to think about managing that change. How do we think about bringing people along at the right time and to not force people too quickly, but to help them now this change? It really comes down to how you communicate that vision and how you communicate to them how their role is going to change, how it won't change, how it's going to be the same, how you're going to support them and get them through this, why this is important to the organization and to them personally. We do a lot of work with organizations, helping them and their communication with their teams and across their teams as they roll out new things like an AI initiative. So if that's something that you're interested in or something you'd like to learn more about, leave a comment below or get in contact with me. Check out our website, and you can find out more information about these kinds of tools that can help you manage that change and help your team go through the dynamics of all these changes. It's going to be a lot of change for a lot of organizations. One quick case study, I'll go through this pretty quickly to wind up this session, which has gone a little bit long. This echoes some of what we're seeing with clients as well. That's why I picked this one out, is they had a very clear case that they wanted, which was their customer service focus. And they already had software in place, which they were using Salesforce. There were other systems around it, but they settled on Salesforce as their CRM. And they started using some of the AI functions that are already in that software to start to enable new types of workflows, new types of functions, and to give away parts of the process to the software that people had done before. What they found, and looking through the details of this case study, echoes what we're seeing with clients and what the conversations I'm having with people, is it really started with a foundation in good data. And a lot of the people I'm talking to, some of the clients I'm helping right now, that's the first thing we start with. Let's get the data clean. Let's get all the stuff in the right place, and then we can start to put the systems over top of it. Same case, same scenario here with Remarkable as well. They also chose somebody that they trusted, especially if they're thinking about customer data. They're talking about sensitive product data inside the company. They had to choose a vendor that they felt like they could trust. This is going to be key. Everybody who says they know something about AI may or may not. So you need to take the time to find a vendor that you feel like you can trust, you can have conversations with, and that can be a good partner for you. Some of the gains, some of the things that they saw when they started to implement AI was a growth in revenue, productivity, of course. Cost savings went down because they could free up customer service agents to work on difficult problems, and they could take some of the smaller problems and offload those to the system. Okay, think about this. Where is your level of usage and adoption inside your business right now, and are you satisfied with it? This is something we talked about at the mastermind. Is where are you along this adoption curve? What are you already doing? Where do you see your organization going in the future into next year? And so even the small group that we had in the mastermind, people were all over the board when it came to adoption of AI. Okay. All right. So that's the end of this first part of this session. Stay tuned for the second one, which will follow this one. And we'll talk more about AI strategies and what you can do, some practical steps that you can take first to get yourself and your organization ready for the future with AI.